All right, what's up, everybody? This is the Red Alert Podcast. I am your host, Joe Chapp, with my other host, Cindy Berry. And Cindy, we're doing this podcast, and there's a lot of people that are upset about the Lions' hire of the offense coordinator. I'll get to talk to them later, but right now we're talking Detroit Red Wings hockey because the Red Wings are just on a tear lately. 7-2-0 in their last what do you want to say? In 2026. They're going to face a tough stretch coming up here with the Maple Leafs. They're going to face a tough stretch with the going to play the Minnesota Wild. There's a lot of nationally broadcasted games that they're going to be playing. So this is going to be a very interesting time for the Red Wings, in my opinion. But what have you seen from the Red Wings that you're like, okay, this is something to be good?
Well, it's a lot of fun, isn't it? I mean, this is what we've all been waiting for. Finally, a little bit of excitement. I mean, I think I really feel like our forward group is clicking. I think those lines are have great synergy. I'm enjoying just watching the action, really. Could the blue line use a little backup? Probably a little bit still, but I mean, I love Mo Sider. He's my guy. So, just love that kid. So I think, we need a little bit of help from Mo over there, but I'm just loving to watch the offensive production out of this group. I think this is dynamic. I think they're really dynamic, fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch this team. In their last couple games, I mean, they've been playing just the Carolina game they played against Carolina and Sergei Fedorov. We'll talk about the Sergei Fedorov at the end because it's like a little bit of a kind of a look back. But they beat the Carolina Hurricanes. They gave up a big lead in that game, but you know what? When you talk about playing the Carolina Hurricanes, that's a team that's a pain in the ass every time you play them. And to win 4-3 in overtime was a great thing, but it comes off the heels of beating the Montreal Canadiens 4-0, beating the Canucks 5-1, which I thought was I said in the last podcast, which you weren't able to come because you're under the weather. I said that was a game that I expected them to come out flat in, and they came out and they played really well. And I was extremely enthused with that because if you remember last year, we watched the Red Wings absolutely come out against these terrible teams. Like Vancouver is a terrible team this year. They're terrible.
Right.
And just lay an egg. And you're like, this is not what you expect from a team that's trying to make the playoffs. So when they fell behind, when they played the Vancouver Canucks, I thought that was a game where this is going to be the, kind of the melting point of the season, in my opinion, because it's a Vancouver team that has nothing to lose. And we've seen the San Jose Sharks come in here one year, the Arizona Coyotes come in one year and blank the Red Wings. It
Yeah.
was a game that they needed to have, and they won that game.
Well, and I think the reason why is that we're seeing that C word come up that we've been looking for, right? Consistency. You're seeing much more consistent play out of the Wings. Before we would see, pretty much barely hanging on or total disasters and maybe with flashes of brilliance or greatness every now and then. And I think that they've turned the corner on that. I think now what we're seeing is consistently above average play, and it's rare when we're seeing them really implode. It's not that it doesn't happen, but it's rare. And so they're playing equally well, I think, against good teams and crappy teams. I think they're again, it's that consistency. I don't think they're changing their game. They're not changing their game to try to fit the opponent. They're just playing their game and they're getting better and better at it. So I think the fact that they're becoming more consistent is really key already to the success they've had so far. And I think it's going to carry them through to the postseason. I think their biggest challenge this last month, I mean, we knew is their strength of schedule was horrible. I mean, they had a very, very, very tough schedule. And so if they can just get through this part, at least, with some kind of a reputable record, keeping them up there in contention, I think you're going to, after the break from for the Olympic break, we're going to see this Wings team. I expect to see them come back rested and ready to make a run into the postseason.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because if you look at the money buck odds right now, the Red Wings have an 81.7% chance to make the playoffs. They have a 36% chance to make the second round. which is in the top half of the league. They have a 3% chance to win the cup and a 7.3 chance to make the cup finals. And their points that they're projected at right now is 99.4, which would be enough to make the playoffs. Obviously, Tampa Bay's playing on a great level. Montreal's right around us. But I think when you look at this team, they're going to be, I think, in the next month, especially with the Olympic break looming, they're going to play 3 road games this week, which is going to be really difficult because they go to Toronto on Wednesday. They play a back-to-back, go to Minnesota, which, Minnesota. We they go to Winnipeg on the 24th on Saturday. So this is going to be an interesting time for them because when you come back, you play the Kings, the Caps, and the Avs. And I think those are 3 home games that are really big home games when you talk about the Avs coming to town, because I believe that's a back-to-back where the Avs play in Detroit and then you go play Colorado the next game that you go out. So
Right.
it's a very interesting time for this Red Wings team. They're playing really well. Even the stats that show for it, like the Raymond, Larkin, and the Brinkett line, which has 68.9 minutes, they have a really good goals for 4.5, which is among the top of the league in terms of that. Raymond, Larkin, and Finney, they're at the top of the league. There's just things that they need to get better at, and it's like the 5-on-5 play and all that jazz. But John Gibson's played really, really good. Hopefully he could stay healthy. He has shown an ability not to stay healthy at sometimes. So that's my only concern. I talked about it, I think it was a couple days ago about the 5-on-5. It needs to get better, but I think what we'll talk about in a few minutes, but it is they might be making some moves, and supposedly Yzerman's hanging around and
Yep. I was just about to say that. I was just about to say, that issue is not lost on Steve Yzerman, and I think everyone is expecting him to make a very big move at the trade deadline. And I don't think he's going to make any type of announcement or any kind of move before the freeze. The freeze is February 6th, and then it'll
yeah.
freeze until after the Olympic break, and then you'll come back, and then we'll be faced the beginning of March with the trade deadline. So I expect that those Vegas odds are going to change considerably in the Red Wings' favor following Steve Yzerman's moves at the trade deadline. And there's some pretty big names that they're talking about here. And we can talk about speculation about what we think Steve's going to do, but I think one of the things that the Wings need, and I mean, I don't think it's practical to say, hey, is there a backup goaltender out there, that we can guy? I mean, that's not realistic. So the question is, are they going to concentrate forward group, or they're going to look for a defenseman to back up Mo Seider? And I think that given the fact that we need to get better 5-on-5, we need to I think keep better control of the puck. It's about possession, right? And it seems like Dylan Larkin's the only one who can get us puck possession, on the face-off. And the thing is, if you don't get possession of the puck, you can't control the puck. So possession and control, I think, are a couple of those things too. I think it's really important, and I think we saw it in the game versus Ottawa yesterday, is that I think it's really important that the Wings, to the best of their ability, try to get another 200-foot player, because we only really have one, and that is, I mean, we've got some great players, you got some great talent, but Dylan Larkin's really your only 200-foot player. And I think if they can nail down another, and Bergeron kind of was developing that game, and now he went to St. Louis. So, you really don't have anybody even in the pipeline with a 200-foot game that can be brought up in the next month or two. So I would expect Steve will be looking for a versatile player, probably somebody in the forward group. I think it will be a forward, only because I think there's more opportunity there. And I think he's looking for, again, long-term. He's not looking for a rental. He's not looking for a guy to come along and get him through the season. He's looking for a guy who he can incorporate and make part of this franchise. And so I think there's more opportunity in the forward group for that. And I think that's what you're going to see him look for. So I think it's going to be a forward, and I think it's going to be someone, if they don't have a 200-foot game, at least has the potential to develop a 200-foot game.
Yeah, I think what you see with this team is there's obviously a need for a guy that's a 5-on-5 that gets goals 5-on-5.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the players who are really good 5-on-5, and there are a few names that come up that could potentially be involved in a trade. I mean, Tyler Bertuzzi could potentially come up in a trade. Artemi Panarin, who is with the Rangers, he could come up in a trade. But Kevin Fiala could come up in a trade. There's a lot of guys that can come up in a trade for potentially a 5-on-5 help. Ryan O'Reilly from the Predators, that they're kind of struggling. But the way I look at it is this: they have it's an interesting thing because they're playing. Um, they have a really good group, right? They're playing really well. They're at the top of the league in terms of the point percentage and all that jazz. But what they're struggling with, in my opinion, is the 5-on-5, and that's the biggest part about it. And Elliotte Friedman came on. He did a podcast about that they will tinker with the roster. This is what he said about the roster. He said, it's paraphrasing, but he says he wasn't going to trade Danielson for Anderson, which is Rasmus Anderson, who was the Calgary defenseman who was traded to Vegas from Calgary. And I guess the major breaking point was they weren't trading Danielson. Obviously, at some point they could bring up Danielson, and he's a 200-foot guy too, so that could potentially be the cause. But he says out he was out when there was no extension. Friedman is curious how Yzerman will tinker with this. His actions indicate for a player that he with term who he thinks is a difference maker, he'll do it. And that's kind of just what you said. In a way, he's not going to do it for just right now. He's not going to just throw picks and players away for right now. He wants a player that he can get with term. He wants a player that he can get that he can have for a couple years. There's a couple names that have been mentioned, like Elias Pettersson from Vancouver, which was a couple years ago. You remember that whole debacle?
They're talking about him again right now.
And that's a guy who could potentially be traded to the Red Wings. Now, is he a perfect fit? No. Would a change of scenery do good? Potentially, yes, because Vancouver is it's a dumpster fire. If you just watch that team, you're like, this is not going good for Vancouver, and even the local media is turning on the Canucks, and it's just funny to see it because a couple years ago they were the darlings of the league, and they were trading for Philip Hronek, and they were mortgaging their future to, get the defenseman, and they're mortgaging this, and that just goes to show you how every little move that you make. That's why it's so imperative that Yzerman, sticks to what he's saying. He wants to tinker with the roster. He doesn't want to overhaul the roster. And I think that's the biggest thing. Because if you look at what the Vancouver Canucks did, they went and traded 2 first-round picks for Philip Hronek, well, first and second round pick. And that first round pick became Axel Sandin-Pellikka, who is playing with the Red Wings right now. So it just goes to show you, the moves that you make and you think that they're great right now, I'm pretty sure over the long haul, Vancouver Canuck fans will want to have Axel Sandin-Pellikka over Philip Hronek. I might be wrong. Maybe Hronek turns into Nick Lidstrom or Brian Rafalski, but that's not going to happen. But that's what happens when you make these trades. It's why it's so imperative that you have a general manager who has a thought process to say, look, I'm not going to do that if it's not going to make sense.
Yeah, Rasmus Anderson wouldn't break my heart if he came here. I know he's a defenseman, but I think there's again some real value in getting Mo Seider, a real solid D-man on his side of the ice. So I think that there's a benefit there. I just don't know if Steve's going to do that. I don't know if defense. I think he's looking to be more offensive. I think again, it's their style. They need to be aggressive. They need to be scrappy. They need, that's kind of who they are. They're I don't think they're going to move into this postseason with we're just trying to defend what we've got. We're trying to defend our position. We're trying to make it to the next round. I don't think they're taking that position, that posture. I think they're taking the posture of we're going to take it to the net every chance we get, and then when they don't think we're coming anymore, we're going to come again, and we're going to be back there, and they're going to have to deal with us. Whoever that opponent is. So I think they're taking a little more aggressive stance. So, but it wouldn't break my heart if we saw Rasmus Anderson. I think he could provide some long-term stability. The problem is, like you said, term. That's the thing is I think Steve is definitely going to pick someone that he can get here to commit for several seasons rather than just take a flyer on some rental. I just don't see that happening. I think he's going to take a more long-term approach, and I think he's going to go with a guy who's, not going to just be dialing it in.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important part when you talk about this team. They can't afford to take risks that would prohibit their long-term success. You know, I talked about it earlier. I think it was a couple of days ago. I posted it on the G Sports YouTube page, but I was talking about the people who talked about the Red Wings not trading for Quinn Hughes, and and everyone was saying that you could have gave Edvinson in that deal. Danielson could have been, or Casper could have been part of that. And just to know that you don't have a concrete answer if you're going to get an extension done with Quinn Hughes, and that's why you didn't pull the trigger, knowing that
Yeah,
he has
because
Quinn
Hughes
Hughes.
wouldn't commit to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're not going to commit to that, it's kind of stupid to trade Edvinson and Casper, and then 2 years later you're going to be out of luck. You're going to be really like you're going to be like holding the bag. You know what I'm saying? And that the Red Wings can't afford to do that, especially a guy like Edvinson, who him and Sider have been one of the best defensive pairs in hockey by far. It's not even close. They are just they're doing dynamite work. I can't. I don't know where
They're wrecking it. They are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been amazing to watch those two, and even like statistically, they're the best defensive duo next to Devontae's and Kyle Markar. So there you go. So there is a reason for that, but with the Elias Pettersson stuff, I would be interested in Elias Pettersson. I really would, but again, it got to make sense. It has to make financial sense in the way that they get it. A
Well,
player
that's
that
it.
could,
That's what I was going to
yeah,
say, Joe. I mean, this guy's got an $11.6 million cap hit. So they're going to have to retain some of that in order for it to make any financial sense. And I, I just, Steve is not going to go. He's never has gone in and paid big bucks for anybody, really, except for the guys who have proven that they are going to stick around. And I think that's the other thing too. And that's going to be an intangible that I think Steve's going to use to evaluate some of his options. And that's going to be the fact that a player isn't willing to commit to a 2 or 3 season or year deal says a lot about how they view this organization. It looks like, hey, I'm just going to go in there, do a one and done kind of thing. If we make it, great. If we don't, that player is already, if he's not going to commit to you, he's already looking to move. Right.
yeah,
And I don't think Steve Yzerman is interested in that at all, because it's not good for the long-term health of the organization, because it's a matter of what does it say about that guy's commitment to this team. They're looking for somebody who's going to fit into the culture. They're looking for somebody who's going to commit to the organization, and somebody who's not willing to look at a multi-year deal it says a lot about that, and that will affect the locker room, and that will affect ultimately the performance, especially if you got our existing guys who've been sitting around waiting for this moment to come, and now you're going to bring some guy in who doesn't have that same level of commitment. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work in the locker room. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. So you got to bring a guy that's equally committed, and that says a lot when they won't commit to, at least I would think, the next season.
yeah. I look at Elias Pettersson this year. He's an interesting fella. He has 25 giveaways, 15 takeaways, which is not good.
Interesting fella. I like that, Joe. He's an interesting fella.
He's an interesting fella for sure. His goals above expected is 3.9. He wins 44% of his faceoffs, which is all right, I guess. He has 9 defensive zone giveaways. He does have ability to turn over the puck in the defensive end. So I mean, that's something that you would have to look at when Yzerman's kind of like going down the rabbit hole of, do I bring this player in? Because I said it yesterday on the Michigan Sports Central podcast, and I tied it into Red Alert because I knew people were going to listen to today. But I said, if you go get Elias Pettersson, this month off gives CVY all the chance to see what he needs to see. I don't
Yes.
know if Elias Pettersson made this team Sweden. I'm trying to look that up, but if he did, you get a better look at him with capital competition around him, you know what I'm saying? Where
Yeah,
he's got actual good players around him instead of like, you know, D minus players.
right.
That's a good thing. But yeah, this whole Elias Patterson thing is interesting. There was there's rumors about this guy and this guy and this guy. There's been rumors all over the place for the Red Wings, and I think when Elliotte Friedman says that they will tinker and they're not going to spend assets on a player that's
Right.
a rental. I think that's something that you is probably in line with what the Red Wings are probably going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't sit around, holding my breath waiting for Austin Matthews to show up in the winged wheel. Like other people were saying, is he going to show up in a, Red Wing sweater, or which one is he going to show up in? I that would shock me, honestly, if that happened. I haven't heard any rumblings of that outside of kind of the fan base. And I think that's kind of like fantasy hockey type of
Yeah.
a
Au-
conversation. I don't think it's
Austin Matthews getting
practical.
traded is funny as hell.
Yeah.
That started with the Toronto Maple Leafs fans and all that. It doesn't have any weight, but this
Well,
whole
that's just because they're cranky. Toronto's fan base, they're cranky right now. That's all. Well, they're
yeah,
always cranky.
but the one I'm really interested in, and I think this would be a very interesting kind of dynamic. I'm interested in three players.
Okay.
I'm interested in Elias Pettersson, obviously, because I think he has something left. I'm
Okay.
interested in Artemi Panarin, and I'll tell you why. You could put Artemi Panarin on the line with Larkin Raymond. That could be legit. Or you could put Kane with Artemi Panarin, and they have a connection. So that could work. Or Vincent Trocheck, which is the Rangers guy again, who they said that they're going to go through a rebuild, and that did not hit well with that fan base. The Rangers fans were not happy, but I mean, what do you expect when you kind of give up a lot of prospects and your prospect pool is not that good? That's again what we're saying about trading for the future. You eventually have to pay the piper, and that's exactly what the Rangers are doing. So I like Trocheck. I like Elias Pettersson. I like Artemi Panarin. And I'll give you a name that I think a lot of people aren't really how do you want to say it? I don't think they're looking at is Carson Soucy from New York, because obviously they're going to be rebuilding. They're going to be sending people out. I think you can get him on a cheap rental kind of deal. That might be that might work. But there's a million different things that can go into fruition. We don't know what's going to happen with the Devils when they want to trade Dougie Hamilton, so that could really weigh into this. And so there's a lot of moving parts, and I think that after the Olympic break, we'll start to see a little bit more triculate. I'd be shocked if something happened. I don't know if there's a Olympic break freeze for the NHL. I
Yeah,
was
they freeze on February 6th.
oh, is it February 6th?
Yep.
Let me see. Freeze. Yeah, I'm gonna look at it right now.
Yeah.
Because I know that there was a freeze for Christmas. I would be shocked if they would like uh uh yep, February 2026. Uh I don't see a freeze.
I thought there was a trade freeze on the 6th, but um
Yeah,
either
we don't know because the Olympics comes around very often, and the last time the NHL they didn't have a freeze. The four nations people were traded, so I don't know.
either way, I don't think you're going to see Steve Yzerman making a move until right at the trade deadline. I think he's going
Unless
to wait. Because he's very patient, and that's kind of one of his hallmarks, right? I mean, he's a very patient GM, and he's going to put the deal together that he wants, and he's not going to let anybody bully him into anything else or try to move him faster than until he's ready. And that's one of the things I can appreciate about Steve Yzerman as a GM, regardless of whether I think he always makes the right decision or not. That's another thing, but I do think he does maintain control of the negotiations, and that's key when you want to get what you need for your team. So I don't think he's going to bring on a marquee player. I'd be shocked. Usually we hear about those guys.
mhm.
I heard about Patrick Kane before it happened. Heard about DeBrincat. which, by the way, y'all heard it first here on the Red Alert podcast. And just, I have to point that out. I can't help it, Joe. I'm a politician. And when I'm proven right, I just have to point it out, whether it annoys people or not. It's like, no, we were right. We were right on so many things. And people say, how do you know that? Or how do you, what are you relying on? It's like,
We were way ahead of the Fedorov stuff
way
too.
ahead.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
so I have not heard any type of, even JVR, Steve wanted him before we actually got him, but I
Yeah,
think,
you heard rumblings of that.
yeah, yeah.
It was 2 years
So,
ago. They were going to do the deal with Philly, remember? And someone didn't want to retain money, and they lost the deal at the end. That's what that came
it
about.
was a mess. That deal at the end was an absolute mess. So, and I think it had more to do with their side than it did with ours by a long shot. And Steve was very, very annoyed by that. And so,
Mhm.
and I don't blame him because, it was practically all but inked and then it got sidelined at the last minute. But anyway, the point is he is going to do everything he can to prevent that sort of thing from happening again. And he's going to do everything possible to bring in a player at a reasonable rate. I just don't see him bringing in Pedersen at 11.6.
I don't either.
I would be shocked. I don't think we're going to see a marquee player, but I do think we're going to see someone who fits the mold and fits the
Mhm.
holes that we've got. It's going to fill the need. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little more on the depth side, though, to be honest.
Yeah. I would be shocked if they make a big, huge trade, to be honest, unless it really fell into the lap of what Yzerman's trying to do. Maybe that would work, and that would actually go to fruition. But the reality of the situation is, I don't think they're going to make a deal like you just said for a big name player unless it's a deal that really makes sense to them. They're not going to make deals that are going to hamper their future because they do have a bright future. And I think the time for making those big bold trades is when you know what you have. Um, it was interesting. I read an article from an NBA. It was for the Pistons, ironically, and there was a former general manager, and I have a line of thinking that this is exactly what probably Yzerman was thinking. I want to get into the playoffs first and see what I have, and that way I know what I can attack. Go into free agency, go into trade. You're obviously going to make a trade here and there, but you're not going to go make this big bold trade before you truly know what you have or you don't have. And the Red Wings are in a really good place because if you look at the way that they're playing, if you look at the way that Grand Rapids is playing, how Sebastian Cossa and Trey Augustine are developing, Carter Gylander in Grand Rapids, how he's developing. They have trading pieces that are, very, how do you want to say it, valuable in the net mining situation, but they're not going to make those moves right now. It would take a, like I said, like Friedman said on the thing, he will tinker with it, but he's not going to overhaul it. And I think that's the major sticking point.
Yeah, I think he's right. That's why I said it wouldn't surprise me if you saw a depth player come into the fold, because that's more or less just a refining piece, and maybe a little insurance policy, rather than changing. Don't change what's working. That doesn't even make sense. But you want to bring in some options, and I think that that's what Steve's going to be looking to do, is to bring in some options and maybe to give a little upfit where he noticed, where we've pointed out he's seeing the same thing. It just cracks me up, by the way, when you see people and they make, in the comments or whatever, and they're saying that Steve Yzerman doesn't know hockey. I mean, you can say a lot of things. You can say I disagree with them. You can say I think he screwed that up. I think he made a missed opportunity. But don't say Steve Yzerman doesn't know hockey. That's just absurd. So it kind of cracks me up. But the thing is that Steve Yzerman knows hockey on the ice as well as, in the front office. And he's got to consider both of those things. So I guarantee you, probably as a player, if he were the captain of the Red Wings today, he would probably be lobbying for something different than what he's looking at right now, because he's got to consider both sides. He wants to obviously get this team the best positioned as possible to make as deep a run as they can. And but at the same time, he's got some real, he's got to look long term. So I think all of that is going to factor in. Who's it going to be at this point? I couldn't tell you because I haven't heard anything. But as soon as I do, I'll let you know right here on the Red Alert podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot of names that they can go get. Like you said, the whole Elias Pettersson thing. He's in year 2 of an 88. I mean, of an 8-year contract, not 88. Damn, that'd be a long contract.
Yeah,
Like 11.6
million, right?
11.6
Yeah.
million. He will be a free agent in 2032 at age 33. So like you said, it would really have to be boiled down to, the Canucks taking a deal that they wouldn't want to take. I don't think that they're just going to take a deal just for that, or they might just want to get rid of him at a cost and be like, all right, we'll take the brunt. You give us a first round pick, and that's kind of what we'll do. That'd be great, but you know what? There's going to be more that comes along with it.
Well, they're trying to free up this cap space for something. They're pretty much going into essentially a rebuild, and so they're going to need to raise some capital for that and open up some space for that. And I guess I don't know enough about their plans and their intentions or their motivation to be able to say what they would take or what they wouldn't take, but I think everybody understands they're going to have to retain some of this salary. I don't know of any team in the league who has that kind of cap space to absorb that and not have to sacrifice somewhere else. And the question is, who has the ability? I don't think the Red Wings are in a position, as you said, to give up anything that they have set up for the future. And I don't think Steve has any intention of doing that. And he needs to retain some cap space to allow for the retention of some of this talent and blown 11.6 million of it, or I don't know how much they'd have to retain, Joe. A lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I see Steve Yzerman falling at probably maximum somewhere in the 3 million range for anybody he might pick up in terms of affecting his cap space. That's more Steve Yzerman to me, and that would probably be for what people would consider a higher end player. Otherwise, he's going to fall right in the 1.7 to 2.1 range. He tends to like that 1.875 number. I think that's probably likely. So the question is, I think Steve is approaching this like, I have a budget. What is available in my budget? I don't think he's approaching this like, I want this guy or I got to have that guy and now I'm going to find the money. I don't think that's the case. That's just not how he rolls. Okay. I mean, he's going to come in saying, this is what I've got to spend. If I've got Chevrolet money, I'm not looking at Cadillacs. And even if I have Cadillac money, I'm going to try to get one used. I'm going to try to get one at a deal. I'm going to try to get something. I mean, that's just, he's not going to pay full price. And so the question is, who's available that fits all of those different parameters? I think, it's getting kind of slim pickings when you start to look at all of those factors.
Yeah, there's a couple more names that I think would be potential trade candidate opportunities. I look at Braden Shen, who's a center. He could help you out. I look at a guy like don't rule him out, but you'd have to give up a lot to get him. So that's why I need a free agent. Jason Robertson from Dallas.
I knew you were going to say Robertson.
You'd have to give him a lot to get him. I would like to get him, but at what cost? There's also one name that I think there's two names from the Predators. I think that could make sense for Steve Yzerman, and one is
your secondary hometown team.
The Nashville Predators, because they're going into a rebuild too. They just don't know it yet. Stamkos could be traded. That's the rumor in Nashville, that he could be traded. And then Ryan O'Reilly could be traded. So if you could potentially get those two, that would help out a little bit. The problem with the Predators is they have no connection, no chemistry. That's probably the main reason. And they have some good prospects coming up the ranks, but they're not there yet. Like, they're obviously struggling to do whatever. They're struggling just to get wins on the. But then they go out and beat Colorado 9-2 or something like that, something crazy like that. So it didn't make any sense. But those two are situations I could see the Red Wings going in, because Ryan O'Reilly has another year left on his contract. Stamkos has 2 more years left on his contract, and those are kind of the ones I see. And then you got Trocheck, who I mentioned earlier. He has 3 years left on his contract. He's a center, so that could help out too. And then there's a bunch of other guys that really don't fit the Red Wings in terms of what they're trying to do, but those are kind of the fits I can see. So those would be considered tinker moves. No overhaul, no, we're gonna go get this huge player. I don't see that happening, and you don't either. So there's no point in just rehashing the constant trade chatter.
I
I'm sure we'll
probably
get.
like O'Reilly best out of all of the options as far as an all-around value. I think I like O'Reilly best out of all of them.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly is an interesting one because here's the deal on Ryan O'Reilly. So he is in the third year of a 4-year contract of $4.5 million. In terms of Stamkos, he's $8 million. So that's a $3 million difference right there. Ryan O'Reilly has 13 goals and 26 assists, 39 points in 46 games, nearly a point per game player. And then you look at Stamkos, he has 20 goals, which he has more goals, but 31 points. He has 11 assists. So it's an interesting dynamic. I know Yzerman wanted Stamkos when he became a free agent. He went to Nashville because of the no income tax. Florida, Tennessee, Vegas, no income tax. Great for the players, but
But hey, Michigan doesn't, they just put a moratorium on the income tax. The one thing that I can give Gretch, Big Gretch some credit for is that she's put a moratorium on Michigan income tax here for I think 2 years, 2 or 3 years. So that might help us out in that regard. I don't think he's going to spend the money on Stamkos though, Joe. I really don't. And I agree with you. I think before I know he was looking at Stamkos, but you had a different you had a different circumstances at that time, and he was in a different financial position at that time. He would have restructured differently if Stamkos had been part of the mix. At this point, I don't see Stamkos as a fit financially. Just like I think Pedersen's the same problem. I think Ryan O'Reilly, again, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, is probably the best value in terms of what he can bring, and I think he's the better fit. So that's the one I would like, and I would expect to see him before Stamkos.
yeah, it's if or end, but I think Ryan O'Reilly would be a good fit for this team because then you could slide Top down, Casper down, and then you can kind of tinker with the lineup, and that's exactly what Friedman was alluding to. So
And
you're
I
right
think
about
he'll
that.
play. I think he would play well with. I think he would play well with Larkin. I think he and
Yeah,
Larkin are similar players, and I think that they would play well. And if nothing else, he could be. I and some people may argue with me, but I think instead of Larkin being an O'Reilly light, I think O'Reilly's more like Larkin light. But
yeah.
that's okay. You know what I mean? At least at this point now in his career. So, but it doesn't hurt to have one of those backups, and I think that O'Reilly would contribute a lot overall. So.
The line that would really give me a little bit of pause would be you put Ryan O'Reilly with the Brinket and Kane.
Yeah.
Could that be a
Yep.
formidable line? And then you got two
Yep.
centers down the middle, two lines that are really doing good, and you got a four-line team that could really help out. So that's kind of where I lean. The Stamkos one is interesting, but again, like you said, $8 million, $5.5 million, a totally different system. And Stamkos is not the guy who is necessarily a good defensive player. The one thing you could say about Ryan O'Reilly, like you said earlier, you got to get someone who gels into the team, and that's the most important aspect of the trade is who gels into the team. You're not going to just go trade for someone and be like, he's fine. No, it has to really work into fruition. So
Yeah, I think that's our best bet. And again, I have not heard anything. And Joe, when we come on here and we talk, rumor mills and we talk what we're hearing and stuff, it comes from pretty good, reliable sources. I'm not positioned right now to say anything about that on anyone, but my gut tells me that I would not be surprised to see Ryan O'Reilly. That's the one because I think Steve's going to do the same, and everybody's doing the same analysis, and I think they're going to come to pretty much the same conclusion, providing they can make a deal. I mean, that's the other piece that people say, oh, well, Steve didn't get this guy or he didn't get that one guy. Well, you got to remember, there's another side of that negotiation, and that person, there's a number of weird, crazy reasons why guys go to teams or don't go to teams
mhm.
or whatever, and a lot of times we have that isn't made public. So don't lay it all on Steve like he wasn't able to get this done or he should have got that done. I heard all of that too at the beginning of the season. Why didn't he get this done, or how come he's not making this move, or why didn't he do that, or whatever, right? So just keep in mind, providing that Ryan O'Reilly is open to it, and I haven't heard he isn't, but I haven't heard that he is either. Do you know what I'm saying? I haven't heard it either way, but my money's on O'Reilly. That's all.
It would be an interesting. It would be an interesting trade. It'd be an interesting fit for the Red Wings. Obviously, what we said the whole time, it has to fit with the Red Wings. And going into the next segment, the last segment of the thing, Sergei went to the rafters. What a great
Yeah.
ceremony that was. Now, me and you, a couple years ago, we said it. We said Sergei Fedorov was going to he's going to go to the rafters.
Yep.
Now, I did think it was brilliant on the Red Wings' part to do it when your team is actually decent. How unfortunate would it be for you to go and have a Sergei Fedorov retirement and your team get housed by Carolina or housed by Toronto in the Jeff Blashill and Derek Alone years? But
Right.
I love what Todd McClellan said, and I kind of brought this up, with the Sports Central podcast, because I was talking about Sergei going to the rafters, and McClellan said the same thing. He says, it's a great reminder to those young people, because he said that there was a guy on his team that he wouldn't name who it was, but one of the
I know what
players,
you're gonna say. I love it. Go ahead.
asked, "Who's the guy in the wheelchair?"
Right.
And
Right.
McClellan had to sit him down and show him highlights, and it just goes to show you, like, I laugh about it, but like kids these days, or people in general these days, they're not educated enough, right? Especially in the sports realm too. Like, they don't know the history of this team, or they don't know the history of this. They don't really factor that in. But when you
Right.
have a moment like this where you celebrate someone like Sergei Fedorov going to the rafters, it kind of sets up a unique opportunity for the kids that are younger, who may have not seen Sergei as a player, or may have not seen Vladimir Konstantinov as a player. They get a chance to kind of rehash what it's all about and why it's important to wear the jersey that you're wearing. It was interesting because there was a guy in Boston. He said, because Zdeno Chara got his jersey retired by the Boston Bruins.
Right.
And the guy goes, "He's very tall, but I don't know if he's that good." And the coach goes, "He won a effing Stanley Cup, dude. Like,
That's
what are you
great.
talking about?" But it just goes to show you, and it's a great reminder for the young kids,
Yeah.
what this franchise is all about, who Sergei Fedorov is, who Konstantinov is, who McCarty is. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't grow up in that age, and they're probably like, "Oh, I don't know what this is about." Like, you have to do the homework, but I thought it was hilarious, that whole story McClellan said about the kid that asked who the guy in the wheelchair was. It was like, "Buddy, sit down. You're gonna watch these highlights."
God, I hope the heck it wasn't a defenseman who asked that question.
Right.
um
Plot twist, it's Simon Evanson. No, it's not Simon
Yeah,
Evanson.
right. And maybe they need to like do a little more orientation with these guys, with these young ones when they come into Grand Rapids or something. It's like, hey, if you stay with this organization, you need to know what wearing that wing wheel means, and talk about some of these legends of the game and just the history, because that is a huge part of what we're about here in Detroit. And so yeah, maybe they need to do a little bit about that so that when these guys go out there on the ice, they know what it means and what it means to the people who are watching. Because you know what? The fans have all of that history. The fans have it in their bones and in their blood. And these guys, if they're on the ice and they know that and they feel that, that's going to help with the connection with the fans. It's going to help with the energy and everything else. So maybe they need to do that. But it's funny because when I was interviewing a lot of they were young then, but now they're heck, a lot of them are mid-career now in the NHL. But when I was interviewing a lot of players for my book, and that's coming out this year, and the movie and all that stuff that's going to go with it, I would say to them, hey, have you ever met Darren McCarty? Because as you know, he's a collaborator on the project and a very good friend of mine. And they would look at me like, No, but like kind of like no, I haven't met him, but like no, I'm not sure who that is. Now I have a defense, okay? Because when someone said to me, "You need to
Oh,
you need to
that's
talk to
different
Darren
though.
McCarty," and I'm like, I don't know who this Darren McCarty guy is, but I'll find out. Right?
You were just discovering hockey.
I
It
was,
it's
yeah,
like it when someone says like the young player that's on the Red Wings who said that about Konstantinov.
right.
It's like
That's what
how
I'm saying. There's no
how did you
excuse for that.
you don't have an excuse.
No,
Your game is professional hockey. It's like you should know your players that even like the former players, like the Hall of Fame players and the great players that play before you. You
right.
should know because I think it's interesting because um, Tom Brady spoke about it. I know you love your Tom Brady.
I
Tom
love me
Brady.
some Tom Brady.
Tom
Love that
Brady.
man.
Tom Brady spoke about it. He goes, it's interesting when you're a young player and you don't know everything. You just go back in the history of football, which she's in, or in this case, hockey, and you
Right?
just look back at the players that you want to emulate. Like,
Yes.
do you want to emulate? And I think
Yes.
a player want to emulate. Do you want to emulate a guy like Konstantinov? Yes, 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 you do.
100% yes, right.
Do you want to emulate a guy like Sergei Fedorov? Yes, yes, you do. Like going back, like even like even when I was growing up, like Ray Bork, right? I
Yeah.
didn't really know who Ray Bork was as a player. I had to go back and like look at like when he was younger because I remember when he won the Stanley Cup with Colorado in 2000 or whatever.
Mhm.
But I had no freaking clue how good he was with the Boston Bruins. I had no clue. I was what was I 6 at the time in 2000, so I had no clue.
Oh
So when I
god.
yeah
2000, I was partying in the 1999 coming into 2000. We were all partying like it was 1999. I remember that.
Y2K.
Yeah, the Y2K bug. We were all worried about everything going down and all of that. So it's just so funny. And you were 6. How cute is that? Like I was pregnant then, I think, for my second daughter, right? My second daughter. So but that's too cute. But yeah, the point, but your point is well taken, and that is that we have to learn from history, otherwise we're doomed to repeat it for the
Yes.
bad stuff. But we learn a tremendous amount by standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. So I think that there is tremendous benefit in learning about that, and it was great that all those guys, the current team was there. The past players were there who'd played with Sergey. I thought he did a fantastic job. One of the things that Sergey said before the event was that he was working on his speech and he wanted it to be funny and he wanted it to be entertaining, and he was very concerned that he would do well writing it. Obviously English is not his first language. But I thought he did a fantastic job. By the way, so Sergey, if you're watching this, I think it was excellent. I couldn't have written it any better myself. I thought the balance was great. The humor, along with the historical reference, along with all the, gave credit where all the credit was due. I thought he, acknowledge the fans. I thought it was a terrific, terrific night, a wonderful event, and a great speech by Sergey. I was very excited to see it. Like you said, Joe, we've been expecting this. It's been, kind of a long time coming, and even we've been talking about it last couple of years and waiting to see when they were going to do it. And I think you're right. I think they picked the right time,
Yeah,
and it
and I
was
think
great to see everybody there.
I think they picked the right time, and I thought the coolest part about the whole speech, and uh, Jenna's not, Jenna, my wife, is not a big hockey fan. She said, "Who is that guy, and why are you watching that?" But I was like, "It's we're retiring a jersey. Like, can't you see? Like,
Big
this
deal.
is this is a
Yeah.
big deal. It happens like once every like what 10, 15 years, but we will get Zetterberg and Datsuk up there. I guarantee that.
Oh,
Um,
that's Suksa for sure.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But I was telling her like this is like a homage to my like childhood because like Fedorov was
Right.
like you know, you wanted to kind of I was never a fast skater like Fedorov, so there's no chance that was gonna happen ever in a million years. There was no
Yeah.
chance I was gonna be like Fedorov. But I wanted a white pair of Nike skates. And guess what? I got them one year from
Look,
someone that was my dad's friend. He's like, here you go. I'm like, all right. I put those on. I felt like I was Sergei Fedorov.
That's
Was I
right.
Sergei Fedorov? No, but it was just the fact of the matter that he had the image of the, the white skates, the Corvette, which that did make an appearance in it. The Red Wings
Yeah,
wearing
that was
white,
cool. That was
the white
cool.
skates and warm ups. That was cool.
Yeah.
And then even like the visor that he wore, like he was the first person to wear a tinted visor in hockey, and people were like, there was a Don Cherry clip that surfaced the day of, and it goes, "What's he wearing the dark visor for? It's not sunny out there." And then Don McLean, of Hockey Night in Canada, goes, "Well, he goes so fast, he's pretty much seeing blazing suns anyway." So it was just funny, man. Like the whole thing was great, and the Red Wings did a damn good job of it with the
Yeah.
skates and all that jazz. And it was just a perfect ceremony. And I thought the coolest part about the whole ceremony and the speech that you were talking about was when he left Detroit and he met his wife, and that's why he has the kids. And it was really cool to get a backstory into what he was thinking at the time, that it was a mistake, but then it didn't turn into a mistake. And then things happen for a reason. But
Right.
people are like, why did they have it on a Monday night against Carolina? Well, let me sit you down. That's who Fedorov first signed his offer sheet with, and that's what started the whole Karmanos and Illich war.
That's right. That's
They
right.
did not like each other after that, and they kept trying to one up each other as Michigan businessmen. And I always thought that was funny. It's actually funny because Karmanos lives on Cass Lake, right? His family lived on Cass Lake.
Yeah.
Mike Illich bought across from Cass Lake. It wasn't even his primary residence, but he made it 10 times bigger than Karmanos. He said,
You know
all right.
what? One of these days, Joe, I dream of having that kind of money to just do stuff to tick people off if I want to. Like, I'm gonna make, that's great. But talking about, young people who don't recognize, I just gotta share this with you, right? So yesterday, my son says to me, we ordered pizza for dinner, and he's like, yeah, you know what, Mom? He goes, I just, Little Caesars is okay pizza, but this other pizza is the best. And I wish they had, this is, for the all the hockey games, the Red Wings games. I said, well, son, you see, there's a reason why Little Caesars pizza is all over the hockey games in Detroit. I'm like, it helps that the owner owns the team. He's like,
Yeah.
well, but like they don't know, right? I mean, they just don't know about that. But yeah, there's so many great stories that I've been told about they call Mr. Mr. Illich.
Mhm.
And I never met him personally. A lot of times, in my line of work, I've been around a long time, and so I'll have met a lot of these folks just in passing or at events or whatever. I never had the opportunity to meet him, but I've heard some really great stories about him.
Yeah, Mr. I was if you ever the people that talk about him, they'll say that he was a very petty person. And I live for the pettiness that Mr. I had with the whole building the place across the street from Carmanas and making it bigger. It's kind of along the same
Yeah.
line of 50 Cent doing his documentary on ABC because it airs in prisons for P. Diddy. So it's kind of the same thing.
Or how about that guy who owned the strip club down on 8 Mile, and he bought the house next door to his ex-wife and put up this big middle finger statue that she had to look at every time she was soaking in the tub or whatever. I mean, that just takes a special kind of like screwed up. I mean,
you when you're
really,
when you're that petty, that is the life of petty that I live for. That is
right.
great.
I mean, when you're that rich that you can be that petty and it's all good,
It's like
like
no,
you can
this is
afford that.
this. I don't, they're like, aren't you know you're spending money? And he's probably like, who
What, like lunch
freaking
money? I don't know.
cares? Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. I will just get a satisfaction out of spending this money, knowing that the other guy is not happy about it.
That's That's it. Well, it keeps life interesting, whatever. But yeah, great ceremony. I thought it was terrific. And I'm very, very happy for Sergey. Part of the reason, and a lot of people may or may not know this, but a lot of the reasons why his jersey was kept out of the rafters really was a personal and a beef kind of a thing. And I think he took he has taken responsibility for his part in that, but it was really personal more than anything. And I was just happy to see that, this jersey retirement, in addition to commemorating all of the tremendous accolades and all the tremendous contributions that Sergey has made to Detroit, it really does represent, somewhat of a reconciliation of that war, a settlement of that war. A peace has come, and I'm really happy for everybody involved that that was able to happen. And the
Yeah.
thing is, as you get older, and Jeff and I were talking about this yesterday, as you get older, there's less and less stuff that's worth fighting about.
Yep.
And you kind of yearn for those happier, simpler days. And so you tend to let bygones be bygones the older that you get, and you find yourself a happier person. So I'm hoping that it worked out good, really well for everybody.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think, in the moment you're probably like pissed off, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
about it. But when the dust settles, you go, okay. Sometimes it's better just to, reconcile and make sure things are all correct, and that way that, things don't get out of touch. And Sergey was a huge figure in the Red Wings winning 3 cups. And it was, 2002,
100%.
97, 98. He was fantastic, and it was fun to watch. And anybody who watched the Red Wings during that era, I mean, Scotty Bowman said this, and I laughed my ass off because this is what Fedorov is. He said he was telling the guys, I think he was with the Blackhawks or whatever. He
Hmm.
said, I put Fedorov at defenseman one game, just to say, hey, I'm giving him a challenge. I'm kind of pissed off at him. He didn't play a good game, defensively.
Yeah.
He goes, Sergei Fedorov was better on defense than Nick Lidstrom that game. He goes, I had no clue. I was like, where was that defense when you were on a forward? And then that changed
Right.
everything. That's kind of what you expect out of good coaching. Good coaching brings players up. When we talk about this current team, we talk about Todd McClellan.
Yeah.
And there's examples to go to Todd McClellan, to, Scotty Bowman, in the way that they coach, in the way that they lead. Their leadership speaks volumes. That's the tie-in that you could have here, because, like you just heard, I mean, Scotty Bowman didn't like didn't like Yzerman at one point and wanted to trade him. Then it worked out. Larkin, he said some stuff last year that wasn't pretty. Tom McClellan and Steve Yzerman echoed, saying, no, we think Larkin should be better. That's what we think should be better. I was like,
Yeah.
whew. It's kind of like back in the day, when the Red Wings dynasty first started. That's exactly how it started, with challenging your star player and getting the most out of your star player. And Scotty Bowman said about Fedorov, and just goes to show you that if you want to challenge someone, you can get their best. So that's what I think.
Well,
But
I think every organization, every ascending organization that's on the rise, and their leadership has a watershed moment. And I think Larkin Dillon had his watershed moment probably last year there, when he kind of got put in his place. Yzerman had his watershed moment with Scotty Bowman, and so did Sergey.
mhm,
I can tell you that from many, many, many of the players that I have talked to who have achieved great things, whether that be a Stanley Cup championship or Norris Trophy, or some other sort of high level accolade like that, they have all of them disclose something of a watershed moment in their development as a player or as a leader. And so those things have to happen. They have to happen because they're either going to break them, or they're going to accelerate their development and their growth. And that's what's needed to lead teams to championships. That's what being a champion is all about. And so it's rising to the occasion. And Sergey certainly did that. Dylan Larkin is done that over and over, proven over and over that he can rise to the occasion, and be what this team needs when they need it. And that's why we said at the beginning of the year they were going to the playoffs, and we were unequivocal about it. And I stand by that as well. And I do think they're going to make it in past the first round. I'll say that
yeah,
too.
I think this is a good chance for the Red Wings to, especially for their team, to understand the history of this organization and for the young players to understand the history of the organization as well. And then with this current team, it kind of feels like they're just hitting the surface of what they're going to eventually become. Players like Casper, who has had a rough season, Danielson, who came down to the Grand Rapids. All these players are going to become really good. We've seen Sider and Edvinson take steps up. We know Sandine Pellico will get better as the years go on, but it starts with coaching, and I think that's what this Red Wings franchise has shown you, that every great team has been headed by a great coach. And it doesn't matter, when Dave Lewis took over the Red Wings and ran it into the ground, and then Babcock took over, even as big of a douchebag as he is, even as big as a mean guy that he is, and his growling face and his snarl.
Sounds like you're not a fan, Joe. Join a very distinguished group, because I
there's
know
a lot of
people.
There's a lot of people that aren't fans of him, and there's a couple players that played for him. So I'm just going along.
I've had players tell me they don't care if they already prescribed their name on the Stanley Cup. If it means they got to go with Mike Babcock to get there, they'll take a pass. That's pretty bad.
Well, I go with what he did to Madonna, and that was just wrong. Especially a Livonia Franklin legend, a school that I came from, Livonia Franklin. I don't really, but I don't like that, and I don't agree with it. So he's on my shit list. But he was a good coach. He won a Stanley Cup. He could have won a couple of Stanley Cups if he was actually able to evolve. But I like Todd McClellan because he's been able to evolve. I like Scotty Bowman because he was able to evolve with the players that he had. And I think the best coaches evolve with the players that they have. So this is a great moment for the Red Wings, especially with the Fedorov ceremony happening like it did. But this team is heading towards a really good destination, in my opinion. And I think that as we go on this year, you're going to start to see more and more positivity going forward. And I think the one thing we didn't talk about in this podcast, we'll talk about it next week, is how good of a future that they have going beyond this year. I think that's the most important part. So this was a good podcast. We went a little bit longer than I thought we would go, to be honest. Just over an hour.
Because I hadn't seen you last week. We missed.
I know it was interesting to do it by myself because I'll tell you why I did it by myself. I did it live, and there was a guy that was parading. He was like, "Where's Cindy?" I was like, she's not. She's under the weather, She needs to rest up, She needs to eat her chicken noodle soup for the soul,
Yeah.
And then another person, "Where's Cindy?" And I'm like, "What am I, chopped effing liver, dude?"
Well, hi everybody. Here I am, and I'm going to try my best to be on video as much as possible now that I got my setup kind of fixed. So, yeah.
We'll be more. We'll be going every week, and then when the Olympic break happens, obviously we'll take a little bit of a break, because we'll mostly do it on Mondays. That's what we're gonna plan on.
Yep.
If there's a game, we won't do it on Monday. We might do it on Thursday, but we could do it whenever. We're flexible. So.
We're going to get better. We're being coached by a better coach now, right, Joe? So now we're going to get better.
We're going to be evolved. We're going to be evolving.
We're going to evolve.
All right. Thank you for listening to Red Alert Podcast. If you are new to the channel, because we have a new channel, we want to be getting some more subscribers. So we're going to promote it more. Subscribe to the Red Alert. If you were listening to this podcast on Twitter, because I did broadcast Twitter, go to Red Alert Podcast on YouTube. You'll get the podcast. You could subscribe, and once we get to a certain amount of subscribers, there will be more content coming. But until we get to that point, we're not going to really put a lot of content on there, just our podcast. But
so help us out. Like, subscribe, follow, share it with your friends. We are one of the funnest hockey podcasts that you can possibly watch for the Detroit Red Wings, right, Joe? I mean, all these other ones are boring.
Yeah, if you like hockey, once we get to a certain threshold, you'll get a lot of more content and everything. So that's the way it's going to go. So thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing. For the people that have subscribed, we did get 4 new subscribers today. Woo! But we will see you in the next podcast as we talk more Red Wings hockey here on the Red Alert Podcast. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.
See you then.